For 7 years, Kang Hyun had spoken the same 5 words to every woman who dared approach him. You don't worth my time. Socialites with political connections, models from magazine covers, heiresses dripping in diamonds, all of them received the same brutal dismissal. His inner circle had a name for him, the Stone Prince. Some whispered he was emotionally dead. Others claimed his heart turned to ice the night his mother was murdered. But everyone in New York's underworld agreed on one thing: Kang Hyun would never let anyone matter. But on a humid Friday night in Manhattan's Koreatown, he walked into Lotus Garden, the upscale restaurant he owned but rarely visited, and everything changed. I don't care who owns this place. A voice cut through the kitchen noise, strong and unwavering. You will not speak to me like that. I'm a person, not your servant. Hyun stopped in the shadows near the bar, his attention captured. There, standing toe-to-toe with his head chef, was a black woman with natural curls pulled into a high ponytail, golden hoop earrings catching the dim restaurant lights, her brown skin glowing with righteous anger. She wore the standard server uniform, but the way she held herself, shoulders back, chin raised, absolutely fearless, made her look like royalty. Katie Rivers, though he didn't know her name yet. She didn't notice him watching as she shut down Chef Kim's disrespect in flawless Korean, then switched back to English to defend herself to the floor manager. Every staff member in that kitchen fell silent, shocked that anyone would challenge authority like that. Hyun felt something he hadn't experienced in 7 years. Interest. Real, burning, undeniable interest. Then she turned and saw him, their eyes locked across the restaurant floor. She didn't flinch, didn't bow her head, didn't rush to apologize like everyone else did when they recognized him. Instead, she walked straight toward him with a water glass and menu, treating him like any other customer. "Welcome to Lotus Garden," she said, her voice still carrying an edge from the argument. "Can I start you with something to drink?" Hyun stared at her, this woman who had no idea she was speaking to one of the most dangerous men in New York. No idea that people literally crossed the street to avoid him. No idea that her fearlessness was the most captivating thing he'd seen in years. One look, that's all it took for 7 years of ice to crack. She didn't know who he was. She didn't care about his reputation. And that made him want her in a way that felt dangerous even to him. If you're already hooked on this explosive love story, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss our intense Mafia romance stories. Drop a comment below. Do you think Katie can survive Hyun's deadly world, or is she walking into a trap? Let's dive into this dangerous game where a street-smart waitress does the impossible. She makes the Stone Prince remember what it feels like to be human. Now, let's get into Katie and Hyun's dark love story. Katie Rivers was drowning in a life she never chose. 26 years old, working 3 jobs, running on 4 hours of sleep and gas station coffee. Waitress at Lotus Garden 5 nights a week. Bartender at a sports bar on weekends. Overnight stock clerk at a grocery store when she could squeeze it in. Every dollar went to one thing: keeping her 16-year-old brother, Marcus, alive. 4 years ago, their parents walked out the door and never came back, left a note saying they couldn't handle the financial burden of a sick child. Marcus had just been diagnosed with leukemia. Katie became his guardian, his sister, his mother, his entire world. Tonight at Lotus Garden, she was exhausted, and her patience was gone. when Chef Kim started yelling at her in Korean, calling her slow and stupid, assuming she wouldn't understand. Something in her snapped. She'd learned Korean from a college roommate, picked it up easily because she was good with languages. So when Kim called her a lazy American girl who didn't belong in their kitchen, she responded in perfect Korean. I understand every word you're saying, and if you speak to me like that again, I'm reporting you to management. The kitchen went silent. Chef Kim's face turned red. The floor manager rushed over, trying to calm the situation. That's when Katie noticed him. The man in the corner, half hidden in shadows near the bar. He was watching her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. Tall, impeccably dressed in all black, a dragon tattoo visible at his collar. His face was beautiful in a dangerous way, sharp jawline, dark eyes that seemed to cut right through her, hair falling slightly over her forehead. She grabbed a water glass and menu, determined not to let some rich customer intimidate her, and walked straight to his table. "Welcome to Lotus Garden. Can I start you with something to drink?" He stared at her for a long moment. His voice, when he finally spoke, was deep and smooth like expensive whiskey. "Water is fine, and the chef's special." She wrote it down, aware that he hadn't stopped looking at her. "I'll get that started for you." As she walked away, she felt his eyes on her back. She didn't know that the man watching her was Kang Sten, owner of Lotus Garden and half of Koreatown. She didn't know that he controlled an empire built on blood and fear. She didn't know that her life had just changed forever. After she left, a man in a dark suit approached Hyun's table, his right-hand man, Taeyang. "Boss, should we tell her to show more respect?" Hyun's eyes never left Katie as she moved through the restaurant. "No, don't touch her. I want to see what she does next." But what would she do when she discovered who he really was? Hyun came back the next night, and the night after that, and the night after that. For an entire week he sat in Katie's section, always ordering the same meal, always watching her with that unreadable expression. Katie found it unsettling. Her coworkers whispered about him in the break room. "That's someone important," her friend Maya said. "I've seen the managers practically bow when he walks in." "Who is he?" Katie asked. Maya shook her head. "I don't know. But girl, be careful. Men like that are dangerous." On the 7th night, everything changed. A drunk businessman grabbed Katie's wrist as she tried to clear her table, pulling her close. "Come have a drink with me, beautiful." "Let go," Katie said firmly, trying to pull away. "Don't be like that." Suddenly, Hyun was there. He moved so fast Katie barely saw it. One moment the drunk was grabbing her, the next he was on his knees, his wrist bent at an unnatural angle in Hyun's grip. "Touch her again," Hyun said in a voice like winter, "and you'll leave here in pieces." The entire restaurant went silent. Staff members stopped moving. Other customers looked down at their plates. The drunk businessman whimpered an apology. Hyun released him and turned to the manager. "Get him out." Everyone bowed, deep, respectful bows. The manager rushed to escort the drunk customer out. Other staff members couldn't meet Hyun's eyes. Katie's heart pounded as understanding crashed over her. He owned this place, probably owned half the neighborhood, and everyone was terrified of him. Hyun turned to her, his expression softening slightly. "Are you hurt?" "No, I'm fine." She stepped back, suddenly aware how close he was standing. "Thank you." "You're wasting yourself here." Katie bristled. "Excuse me?" "I have a position, managing hospitality operations for my legitimate businesses. $5,000 a week. Her breath caught. $5,000 a week? That was more than she made in a month working all 3 jobs combined, which meant it was too good to be true. Let me guess. There's a catch. Hyun pulled a card from his pocket, holding it out to her. It was black, expensive looking, with nothing but a phone number embossed in silver. The catch is you work harder than you've ever worked, but you'll never be disrespected again. Call me when you're ready to stop being desperate and start being valued. He walked out before she could respond. Katie stared at the card in her trembling hands, her mind racing. Maya appeared at her elbow. Did he just offer you a job? I think so, or something worse. But when Katie got home that night and saw the medical bill on her counter, $80,000 for Marcus's experimental treatment, she knew she was going to make that call. At 2 in the morning, Katie sat on her bed with her laptop open, researching the phone number on the black card. What she found made her blood run cold. Kang Hyun, 32 years old, head of the Kang family crime syndicate, controlled territory from Manhattan to Queens through a network of restaurants, nightclubs, and import businesses that were obviously fronts for something illegal. He'd taken over at 25 when his mother was assassinated in a rival gang attack. Articles described him as brilliant, brutal, and emotionally dead. They called him the Stone Prince. There were photos of him at charity events and business openings, always alone, always with that same cold expression. One article mentioned that he'd rejected a marriage alliance with the Lee family 3 times, nearly causing a gang war. Her roommate Simone appeared in the doorway. "You're up late." "Look at this." Katie turned the laptop around. Simone's eyes widened. "That's the guy from the restaurant? Girl, he's a literal crime lord. You cannot work for him." "Marcus needs the treatment, Simone. $80,000. I can't get that anywhere else." "It's not worth your life." But was it worth Marcus's life? That was the real question. Katie picked up her phone and dialed the number. It rang once. "I knew you'd call." Hyun's voice was alert, like he hadn't slept either. "I have conditions," Katie said, trying to sound confident. "I don't do anything illegal, ever. I need a real contract, and you don't own me just because you're paying me." A pause, then, "Come to Jade Tower tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock, penthouse level. We'll discuss your conditions, Miss Rivers." Her heart skipped. "How do you know my name? I never told you." "I know everything about my investments. Sleep well, Katie." He hung up. Katie sat there, phone in hand, wondering if she'd just made a deal with the devil. The next morning, she stood outside Jade Tower, the most expensive building in Koreatown. The doorman took one look at the card she showed him and immediately escorted her to a private elevator. The penthouse office was stunning. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan, minimalist furniture, and a massive painting of a dragon that seemed to watch her from the wall. Hyun stood by the windows. He wore a 3-piece suit today, his hair styled back, silver rings on his fingers. He looked like power personified. "You came," he said, turning to face her. "You made a good offer. Now tell me what you really want." Hyun gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Sit. Let's talk business." For the next hour they negotiated. Hyun was direct. His legal businesses were completely separate from his other operations. She would manage 5 restaurants and 2 nightclubs, handle staffing, marketing, customer experience. Everything would be in writing, legally binding. "You'll never be asked to do anything illegal," he said. "You're not what I need you for." "Then what do you need me for?" "You're smart. You're fearless. You see things others miss." He leaned back in his chair. "And you don't treat me like a monster." Their eyes met across the desk. The air felt charged, electric. "Do we have an agreement?" Hyun extended his hand. Katie looked at it, elegant, strong, with those silver rings catching the light. She was probably making the biggest mistake of her life. She shook his hand anyway. The moment their skin touched, electricity shot through both of them. Hyun's grip tightened slightly, his thumb brushing across her knuckles. "Welcome to my world, Katie Rivers." 3 weeks later, Katie couldn't remember what life felt like before Kang Hyun. She was extraordinary at her job. Within days, she'd revolutionized the training programs at all 5 restaurants, implemented cultural sensitivity workshops that made staff feel valued, and launched social media campaigns that brought in younger, more diverse crowds. Revenue increased 35% across all properties. But working with Hyun was torture in the best and worst ways. He was demanding, detail-oriented, expected perfection in everything. Yet he was also protective in ways that made her heart race. When a vendor spoke down to her during a meeting, Hyun blacklisted the entire company. When she worked late, he ensured a car service took her home. He noticed everything, had her office stocked with her favorite tea, remembered Marcus's treatment schedule, asked questions that showed he actually listened. And the way he looked at her during meetings made her forget how to breathe. One late evening, they were alone in his office reviewing quarterly reports. The city lights sparkled below them. Tension hung in the air, thick and suffocating. Katie finally couldn't take it anymore. "Why do you keep looking at me like that?" Hyun's controlled facade cracked slightly. "Like what?" "Like you're trying to figure out if I'm real." He stood slowly, moving around the desk toward her. "Because I've spent 7 years convinced I was incapable of wanting anything except power. Then you walked into my restaurant and looked at me like I was just a man." Katie's pulse thundered in her ears. "This is a bad idea. You're my boss. You're a criminal. I can't—" "Tell me to stop." Hyun's voice dropped to a whisper. He was so close now she could smell his cologne. Expensive, intoxicating. "Tell me you don't feel this and I'll never mention it again." She couldn't say it, because it would be a lie. Hyun cupped her face in his hands and kissed her. It was devastating. 7 years of loneliness and longing poured into one kiss. Desperate and tender and overwhelming all at once. Katie's hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer. Hyun kissed her like she was air and he'd been drowning. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Hyun rested his forehead against hers. "Everything just changed," Hyun whispered. Katie nodded, unable to speak. "I need you to understand something." Hyun's hands trembled slightly against her face. "My world is dangerous. People will come after you to hurt me. Are you sure you want this?" Katie met his eyes. "Are you?" "I've never been more sure of anything." He kissed her again, softer this time, and Katie knew there was no going back. Within a week, they were together. Completely, intensely, secretly together. Hyun was transformed. The stone prince everyone whispered about showed Katie a side of himself that no one else saw. He took her to private rooftop inners where they ate under the stars, showed her the city from his helicopter, pointing out landmarks with boyish enthusiasm, opened up about his mother's assassination and the crushing weight of leading an empire at 25. "She was the only person who saw me as more than a weapon," Hyun said one night, holding Katie close in his penthouse. She wanted me to find someone who could see past the reputation, someone real. I see you, Katie whispered. Hyun met his inner circle. Taeyong, his loyal right-hand man, was respectful but wary. Minho, his tech genius cousin, was openly shocked that Hyun smiled now. Actually smiled. Boss has been different since you started, Taeyong told her carefully. Happier. We're grateful. The biggest test came when Katie brought Hyun to meet Marcus. Her brother was between treatments, looking thin and tired in his hospital bed. When Hyun walked in, Marcus's eyes went wide with recognition. He'd seen the man on the news. But Hyun sat down and talked to Marcus about basketball and video games, promised to get him courtside tickets to a Knicks game when he was feeling better, spoke to the teenager with genuine kindness. After Hyun left, Marcus grabbed Katie's hand. He's scary, but he really cares about you. I can tell. 2 days later, Marcus was transferred to the best oncology center in New York. When Katie found out Hyun was covering all the costs, she confronted him. You can't just... Let me do this, Hyun interrupted gently. Please, your family is my family now. They fell in love. Real, deep, complicated love that defied logic and sense. You're the first person I've trusted in 7 years, Hyun admitted. The first person who makes me want to be more than what I am. Katie confessed her abandonment fears, how hard it was to let anyone in after her parents left. Hyun held her through the tears and promised, I'm not going anywhere. You're mine now, and I protect what's mine with everything I have. For 4 perfect weeks, Katie believed happiness was possible. Then the Lee family requested a meeting, and everything shattered. The meeting happened in a private room at one of Hyun's restaurants. Daniel Lee arrived with his daughter, Ji-woo, and 3 bodyguards. Hyun sat across from them, Taeyong standing behind him. The tension was immediate. We've been patient, Daniel began, his voice cold. Our families should be united. Ji-woo is an appropriate match for someone of your position. I'm not interested, Hyun said flatly. Because of that waitress? Daniel's face twisted with disgust. You're embarrassing both our families by parading this woman around our community. Hyun's voice dropped to something lethal. Choose your next words very carefully. Daniel leaned forward. She's beneath you, Hyun. Black, poor, uneducated. She doesn't belong in our world. Hyun stood so fast his chair fell backward. This meeting is over. Katie is mine. That's not negotiable. Speak about her this way again, and we become enemies. She makes you weak, Daniel shouted. Our rivals see this. Your own people question your judgment. End it before it costs you everything. Hyun leaned across the table, every inch the dangerous man his reputation promised. Let them question. Anyone who touches her answers to me personally. Now get out of my restaurant. The Lee family left, but the threat hung in the air. After they were gone, Taeyong spoke carefully. Boss, he's not entirely wrong. The other families are watching. They think... I don't care what they think. Hyun's hands were shaking with rage. Double Katie's security detail. If anyone approaches her, I want to know immediately. That evening, Hyun told Katie everything. She sat on his couch, processing. Maybe Daniel's right. Maybe I'm putting you in a bad position. Hyun grabbed her hands. You're the only good thing in my position. Everything else is blood and business and obligations I never chose. You make me remember I'm human, Katie. I'm not giving that up. What if someone gets hurt because of me? Then they'll learn what happens when they threaten what belongs to me. But 4 days later, someone did more than threaten. They acted. Katie was visiting Marcus at the oncology center, reading to him while he rested after treatment. Her security detail, 2 of Hyun's men, waited outside the room. Then both their phones rang simultaneously. They stepped into the hallway to take the call. In that 30-second window, 2 men in surgical masks entered Marcus's room. Katie jumped to her feet. "Who are you?" They ignored her, walking straight to Marcus's bed. One of them pulled out a syringe. "Get away from him!" Katie screamed, throwing herself between them and her brother. The man grabbed her arm, shoving her aside. "Tell Kong Hyun that alliances matter more than whores. He has 48 hours to end this disrespect and accept the marriage arrangement." The other man injected something into Marcus's IV line. "Or next time, the boy dies." They disappeared as quickly as they'd come. Katie scrambled to Marcus's bedside. "Marcus! Marcus!" Within seconds, alarms started blaring. Nurses rushed in. Marcus's body convulsed, eyes rolling back. "He's going into cardiac arrest!" They revived him, but barely. The doctor said he'd been poisoned with something that was shutting down his organs. They didn't know if he'd survive the night. Katie sat in the ICU waiting room, covered in her brother's blood, shaking uncontrollably. That's where Hyun found her. He came through the doors like a hurricane, still in his business suit, face pale with fear. When he saw Katie, he dropped to his knees in front of her, cupping her face. "Are you hurt?" "They poisoned Marcus." Her voice was hollow. "Because of you. Because I'm with you." Hyun's expression went completely blank, the terrifying calm before violence. "Who did this?" "Lee family. They said you have 48 hours to accept the marriage or they'll kill him." Hyun's eyes went black. He pulled out his phone, made a call in rapid Korean. Then he turned back to Katie. "Marcus will have the best doctors in the country here within the hour. He will survive. And the Lee family will regret ever speaking your name." Katie grabbed Hyun's arm. "Hyun, don't start a war." "They started it the moment they touched your family." He stood, every inch of the stone prince. "I'm finishing it." Hyun gave Katie a choice. They stood in a private waiting room alone. Marcus was stable but critical in the ICU. "I can negotiate peace," Hyun said quietly. "Accept the marriage to Ji-woo. Create an alliance. Keep everyone safe, including Marcus." Katie's heart broke. "You do that?" "Or I can show them why you don't threaten what's mine. But if I choose that path, there's no going back. It will be bloody and permanent." Katie understood what he was offering. The strategic choice versus the emotional one. The smart decision versus the right one. "I can't ask you to give up your empire for me." Hyun capped her face tenderly. "You're not asking. I'm choosing. 7 years ago, I would have made the strategic choice without hesitation. But you changed me, Katie. You made me feel again. And I'd burn this entire city down before I let anyone hurt you or Marcus." Tears streamed down Katie's face. "Then burn it down." What followed was 48 hours of calculated destruction. Hyun didn't just attack the Lee family. He dismantled them systematically, froze their assets through banking contacts, exposed their illegal operations to federal authorities, turned their allies against them with evidence of betrayals, eliminated their protection by offering better deals to their security. It was surgical, ruthless, terrifying to watch. By hour 36, Daniel Lee was kneeling in an abandoned warehouse in Queens. His empire was in ruins, his family fleeing the city, his reputation destroyed. Hyun stood over him, suit still immaculate despite the violence around them. "You called the woman I love a whore," Hyun said softly. "You poisoned a 16-year-old with cancer. You threatened my family." Daniel spat blood. "Just kill me." "No." Hyun crouched down to eye level. "You'll live with this. Your empire is gone, your reputation destroyed. You'll leave New York and never return. And every day you'll remember that you lost everything because you underestimated what love makes a man capable of." It was worse than death. Exile with the knowledge that he'd been beaten completely. Hyun turned to Tae-young. "Make sure they're gone by morning." He walked out of the warehouse and straight to the hospital, where Katie was waiting. Marcus survived. The poison that should have killed him somehow triggered an unexpected response when combined with his experimental treatment. His cancer began to regress. Doctors called it a medical miracle. Hyun called it justice. 2 months later, Katie and Hyun stood on the rooftop of Jade Tower, watching the sunset paint Manhattan gold and pink. Marcus was in remission, living in a beautiful apartment Hyun had secured for them. Katie ran a hospitality empire by day and was developing youth programs for at-risk kids by night. Hyun was slowly transitioning his operations toward legitimate business, keeping only what was necessary for protection. It was a delicate balance, but possible. Hyun pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. "This ring belonged to my mother," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Before she died, she told me to give it to someone who sees me, really sees me, not just what I can do for them." Katie's breath caught as he opened the box. The ring was beautiful, antique, perfect. "You see me, Katie, every broken piece, every dark corner, and you love me anyway. You make me want to be better while accepting who I am. So I'm asking." "Yes," Katie laughed through her tears. "Whatever you're asking, yes." Hyun actually laughed. "I haven't asked the question yet." "I don't care. My answer is yes." He slid the ring onto her finger and kissed her as the sun set over the city they were rebuilding together. "You proved everyone wrong," Hyun whispered against her lips. "The waitress who was beneath me became the only person above me in importance." Katie smiled. And the man who told every woman she didn't worth his time finally found someone who was worth everything. They stood wrapped in each other as the city lights began to sparkle below them. It wasn't a fairy tale. There would still be challenges, dangers, moral complications, but they would face it together. The Stone Prince had finally learned to feel, and the woman who taught him would never let him forget he was human. 1 year later, Katie stood in the main dining room of Lotus Garden, the restaurant where it all began. It had been completely renovated. The staff was diverse, well-paid, respected. They'd just won an award for Best Workplace Culture in New York Hospitality. Marcus sat at a corner table, healthy and laughing with his friends. He'd been cancer-free for 8 months and was applying to colleges. Hyun came up behind Katie, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Happy?" he murmured. "Ridiculously happy." "Good, because I have news." He turned her to face him. The final transfer went through. As of today, the Kang family business is entirely legitimate. No more underground operations, just restaurants, real estate, and hospitality. Katie's eyes widened. "You really did it." "We did it." He kissed her forehead. "You showed me there was another way." They looked out at the restaurant full of people, diverse, happy, safe. "You know what the best part is?" Katie said. "What?" "You finally proved everyone wrong. You're not the Stone Prince anymore. You're just Hyun, and Hyun is pretty amazing." He smiled, that rare, genuine smile that was only for her. "And you're not just a waitress anymore. You're my wife, my partner, my everything." Katie looked at the ring on her finger, his mother's ring, and felt overwhelmed with gratitude for the day she walked into this restaurant and met a man who was supposed to be a monster, but turned out to be human. And that's the end of Katie and Hyun's story. What was your favorite moment? Drop a comment below and let me know. If you loved this intense Mafia romance, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss our next passionate romance. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.